Today, I'm excited to welcome Humphrey, a community leader and co-founder of Bitcoin Victoria Falls, to the podcast. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Humphrey.
Thank you, Paula.
So, before we get to Bitcoin, tell me a little bit about your background, where you grew up, where you were born, and what you're doing with your time now.
All right. Yeah, so my background, I'll start with my educational background. So my educational background is actually in engineering, nuclear engineering. Yeah, and I was born and raised in Zambia, pretty much. Yeah, and maybe just also talk about my introduction to Bitcoin. So I would say my journey into like finding Bitcoin for me was a thing of like necessity in a way because of where I was, like where I live, and the things that I have access to and the things that I don't have access to. Yeah, so I could say the journey started in uni, just going to the roots. So in uni, I was making a bit of some money online at one point. So I decided, okay, I want to start investing that extra income that I was actually making, and my thought was I want to invest in the most futuristic, most promising, most active market in the world, and that is the US market. Yeah, and just looking at some few basic investing principles, my thing was I want to invest in something that everyone uses. Yeah, so Google, Apple, Facebook, these are the things that I was looking at. Yeah, but much to my disappointment, I later discovered that it wasn't actually easy for someone who is a foreigner to actually invest in these foreign markets, especially someone who is like African, and particularly Zambia for my case, because when I tried to open a brokerage account, I was given a lot of requirements, legal compliances, and it was just crazy. Yeah, so I was disappointed pretty much, and that disappointment somehow led me to start thinking, okay, we need something fair in the world. Yeah, so when Bitcoin came, I could say I was a bit receptive to the idea when I first came across Bitcoin. Yeah, and I should also mention that, like most people, when I was first introduced to Bitcoin, I was attracted by the gains initially. Yeah, but the more I looked into it, the more I realized that there is more to this thing than what meets the eye. Yeah, so like most people, I bought Bitcoin and all these other coins. Yeah, and at about the same time, I also joined Bitcoin Twitter. So I started learning from Bitcoin OGs. So the likes of Gigi, Odell, Alex Graston, Jeff Booth, Michael Saylor, and I also led the Bitcoin Standard. And so from there, I began to understand that, okay, this thing is not just a great asset. It's not just good money, scarce, but it's something that's probably going to help solve maybe 50% of the world's problems. So I started going deeper. Yeah, so the more I started, I started hearing a word, because initially I didn't know the difference between altcoins and Bitcoin. So I started hearing the strong word shitcoin, mostly by I would say Max Kaiser. Yeah, so just to take a bit about Max Kaiser, a lot of people think he's a bit toxic, a bit strong on him being a Bitcoin maximalist like that. But to a certain degree, for me, I feel like he has saved a lot of people from ruin, actually, because of that. Because of Bitcoiners like him that I started looking into the difference between Bitcoin and altcoin. And later I realized that, okay, there's something wrong with these other coins. And what cemented my understanding of the difference is a paper by Jeff Booth. So, Signal in the Noisy World by Jeff Booth. It was actually really good. It explains really well. That's when I realized that, okay, all these other altcoins and maybe NFTs are pretty much useless. It's like building on sand. So that's when I decided to look. I'll go all in on Bitcoin. I'll sell all these other things, and I started saving Bitcoin. And from there, my life has been peaceful, slowly stacking and just enjoying. And yeah, and what I'm doing right now, actually, there's a community that I'm part of. It's called Bitcoin for Fairness here in Lusaka. And I'm also the community leader and co-founder of Bitcoin Victoria Falls. So it's just a secular economy where we try to educate people about Bitcoin and also try to onboard merchants into Bitcoin. So that's pretty much my background.
And how is that circular economy going in Zambia?
All right. So to talk about Bitcoin Victoria Falls, let me just talk about where it came from. So the idea originally was started by a Bitcoiner from the US by the name of Adam, actually. So this person is passionate about Bitcoin as a tool to empower people, and also passionate about charity activities and wake. Yeah, so when it came to Livingstone, I think that's when the idea was born that, okay, we can do something like this here in Livingstone. And then from there, I tried to reach out to Bitcoiners in Zambia who would be willing to work with him on the project. Yeah, and he was able to find me through Anita Posh, Bitcoin for Fairness. And that's how actually we got in touch. I liked the idea, and yeah, that's how we started doing. So far so good. I would say where we are right now is mainly education, because in Zambia there is actually a bad image of Bitcoin because of scammers. A lot of people have been scammed. Yeah, so get rich schemes, and they come with this thing: you buy a crypto token, you make money, you double your money, something like that. So when people hear Bitcoin, they think you're a scammer or you're trying to scam them or something like that. Yeah, so at the moment, I would say education is the main thing that we are focusing on. A lot of people are not as receptive, but a few people who have actually been open to it, actually, it's like it's easy to create. Why? Because the use case and the situation that we are in Zambia is like, it points to the fact that, okay, we need something better.
So let's talk about that situation you're in. You're referring to inflation, right? And so tell us about that. What's inflation like in Zambia?
All right. So in Zambia, I could say inflation is like the biggest problem. So Zambia as a country, probably you know that it's a very peaceful country. So the crime rates are very low, and people are generally kind people, and democracy is good and all. But one big problem that we are facing right now is inflation. Yeah, and for the longest period of time, we have had double-digit inflation. So, in fact, 3 years ago, inflation was like 22%. Right now, inflation is like at 15%, and it's crazy because the government have got a target of 6% inflation. It's just crazy. This actually has led to other problems. So, among which are unemployment, of course, and also corruption. Because when you try to talk to some people who work for the government, it's like some of them, they want to get rich and all that. The money they are getting is not enough, because it's like they have to keep up because the money is being diluted through inflation. So it has been that situation. I feel like the biggest problem that inflation has caused is the wealth gap. So the upper class, the people on top, they're extremely wealthy, and these are only like a few people. And the lower class, the majority, are like struggling day to day. And it's like they can't save their way to financial freedom. Why? Because every year, every month, the government is printing more through inflation, and it's just sad. So that's the situation we're in right now in Zambia.
So the governments there are printing more money, as the US also prints money, but
Yeah.
governments there are printing probably even more money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's talk about, you mentioned the wealth gap.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the people there, you said high unemployment. So with the people living paycheck to paycheck and just trying to survive, how do
Yeah.
you work on getting them into Bitcoin?
Yeah, so the wealth gap is huge, and the main reason, of course, is inflation. Not only that, is because the people, like the richest people, they have got assets, so their assets appreciates, and the reason why the people on the bottom, they can't keep up is because they don't own assets. Yeah, and it's like even if they try to save so that they can buy some assets or something like that, it's hard because more money has been printed year by year. Yeah, so I could say with Bitcoin, the game changes completely, because all of a sudden they realize that, okay, you can actually own an asset which doesn't require you to have like a lot of capital. So it's really exciting when I tell people that you don't really need a lot of money to buy Bitcoin. and it's a bearer asset, and you can actually have it. No one can get it from you. You can buy a cent, a dollar worth of Bitcoin, $2 a cent, and that idea itself is actually mind blowing to a lot of people. Bitcoin is more or less something that can actually reduce that wealth gap, because people can own assets, yeah, even though they don't have a lot of money. And with the nature of Bitcoin being a hard asset, it appreciates over value. So it more or less gives people a fighting chance.
Yes, that's a good point. It's a way for people to own an asset, like you mentioned, even if they don't have a lot. And of course, the education helps. The education helps a lot because once people start learning about Bitcoin, they tend to get motivated to get healthier, to get low time preference. They realize that putting money into an asset that grows over time is a much better than, say, spending on alcohol or other discretionary items that may not be needed.
Exactly.
So, have you found in your own life that the low time preference has changed the way you purchase items?
Yeah, so in my own life, with an asset that is hard, Bitcoin, I've noticed a lot of things have like changed in my own life. I think it has impacted my life in a very positive way. So number one, I don't try to gamble because I know that, okay, there's something that is certain, that is concrete, no one can debate. So I just save and stay humble, and it has made my life a bit easier in that it has also reduced my bad spending habits, because when I've got money, I want to save in a hard asset. Yeah, and it has also kind of like made me a bit more hopeful for the future, because uh, it's like you know for a fact that, okay, one Bitcoin will always ever be equal to one Bitcoin, and that's just amazing. And it also helps. I would say it has helped me focus on the most important thing, because it has freed my time in a way, because a lot of people are in this loop of trying to look for the best investment, the best stock, the best this, that to invest in. Yeah, but with Bitcoin, just focusing on what your craft, what you do for a living, and then living below your means and saving the rest into Bitcoin makes things easier.
Yes, you mentioned that earlier that you started because you wanted to invest in assets like Google or Facebook and in some of the altcoins, I'll call them altcoins, which is like gambling for many people. I
True.
I know some very good traders out there who do well, but that is still staying in the fiat system and being in mostly in Bitcoin, like you said, makes life more simple. So what I hear you saying, your life is more calm because finally we have a money now that we don't have to invest because it's not going down in value, it's going up in value. However, there is some volatility. How do you deal with the volatility?
Yeah, I think, in fact, we make the point of volatility is something that we take serious in our education as in our project Bitcoin Victoria Falls. So we know Bitcoin is volatile, and usually one of the reasons why Bitcoin is volatile is because it's still a tiny asset, and as it grows as an asset class, I feel like the volatility is going to subside, reduce. Yeah, so usually what we actually advise and tell people is when you are saving in Bitcoin, it's better to put in the money that you're not going to need for the next, like, say, 3 years or so. So don't put in the money that you need tomorrow, or you need in 6 months or something like that. Yeah, so understanding the fact that one Bitcoin is equal to one Bitcoin, and over time, in a long period of time, Bitcoin will always go up, and you just invest in the money that you will not need short term. It brings peace of mind. So, with that knowledge, we feel like teaching people that when they get it, it just makes sense, and it's just a bit more peaceful in a way for most people.
Do you think that Bitcoin will always go up because our governments are just programmed to keep printing money?
Yes, I believe Bitcoin will go up forever. And well, I think it's just, because of just basic math. So since we are capped at 21 million coins and about 4 million, people say about 4 million has already been lost. And as human ingenuity and as we progress, more wealth will be created for the human race. And with money which is capped like that, I feel like it will forever expand. And moreover, we know that the governments of the world, as long as there's fiat money, they'll always print money. And the more they print, the more Bitcoin will actually increase in its value. So I believe Bitcoin will go up forever. But in the short term, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, anything can happen. But in the long term, it will forever.
Yes, I agree. I've heard people say that Bitcoin is the great equalizer. Do you see that as true and as helping people in Zambia?
I would say, in fact, that's the reason why I could say I'm part of these projects which are actually helping in Bitcoin education. Yeah. So I can give an example of what I see here in Zambia. For example, we have a lot of content creators in Zambia. People are acting, they are making wonderful content, comedy and all that. But they can't monetize their content on Twitter. They can't monetize their content on Facebook or YouTube. There are these regulations because the money, there's someone who is giving permission and all that, so the regulations and all that. So it has limited a lot of people, and people with talent have been suppressed in a way. With Bitcoin, you pretty much don't need permission from anyone. Yeah, so usually when I introduce people to Nostra and just tell them that, okay, if you are able to make content, and because Nostra has the Bitcoin, people are able to receive payments in Bitcoin and all that. When I introduce people to Nostra and tell them that you can, if you're a good content creator, you make wonderful, valuable content, and people like your content, you can literally monetize your content instantly, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. And that, for most people, has been a game changer. So with Bitcoin being the great equalizer, I feel like with Bitcoin we have a fighting chance, especially in people who are in countries where they don't have that much privileges. Yeah, and also just to give another illustration, I could say if let's say you are born in a country which has like 1,000% inflation, it's like you are condemned by virtue of you being born in that country. Yeah, so with Bitcoin, I feel like it creates a fair playing ground for individuals where you have a money which is not really like it's not tied to the decisions of your president or the governor or anyone who is making decision in your jurisdiction, and you have got a fighting chance. You can actually tap into the global economy, and that's just exciting. Yeah, so I feel like there is a need for a neutral global.
That might be the greatest benefit of Bitcoin. It's the great
True.
equalizer. And Bitcoin gives us the opportunity to have a free market, right? Which means that in a free market, as Jeff Booth says, everything is deflationary. Everything will come down in a free market. We can also
True.
have the opportunity, like you mentioned, for the best talent to get equally paid wherever they are in the world. And and that is a more fair world. And all of the Bitcoiners that I speak to, almost all of them want that, no matter where they live. So I think humans are generally good, but when we are incentivized with bad money, bad action comes out.
True.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about how Bitcoin's changed you.
I could say I was a person who was like kind of like interested in politics, because I used to think that maybe politics is something that can change the world in a way if we're good people learning stuff and all that. Yeah, and as you said, human beings are generally good. I believe human beings are generally good, but there's this quote that I like reflecting on sometimes: power collapse and absolute power collapse absolutely. So when you get power and put it in the hands of human beings, yeah, what usually happens is that sometimes there is always an element of greed and desperation, and this has been the case with the governments of the world. So politicians come into power, they make promises, and they are forced to print money. So it creates a never-ending loop. Yeah, so with Bitcoin, for me, I started seeing politics from a different angle. I feel like we need less of that. We need less heroes, and uh, people need to be given tools for them to be able to save themselves. So we just need something like a tool that can help people save themselves, because you can't really trust a fellow human being in a way. So yeah, so it has changed the way I look at politics. It's like, okay, we need to trust these people less, and just maybe take responsibility. And with a light tool like Bitcoin, where no one can steal what you're working for, it makes it a better way actually. Yeah, I could say another way that Bitcoin has impacted my life has been, I feel like things are just easier to understand, because it's like with fiat money, because I was born under a fiat system, so with fiat money, in a way, it feels like a matrix. So with something like Bitcoin, it's like you are taken out, you're able to see things for what they truly are. So science, nutrition, and all these other things, you say, you begin to see them differently. That, okay, there's a motivation here, and there's fiat, and the wars of the world are happening all over the world. You say, okay, this couldn't happen if we had a better money. And yeah, so I could say it has changed me in many aspects of my life. Yeah, I think that's what I would say about how it has changed me.
Yeah, and another thing it's made me realize is to be a constantly learning. I want to
Yeah.
constantly learn because it's a deep rabbit hole, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
A quote I recently read, I think on Nosta, it's much easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. Mark Twain,
True.
which
True.
is us living in a fiat system under Keynesian economics, when there's another school of economics, Austrian, which most of the world doesn't teach.
Exactly.
So I would imagine in Zambia, the economics that's taught is Keynesian too.
Yeah, yeah. I think in Zambia it's all Keynesian economics, because the idea is the government has to have a hand in the economy. So yeah, so it's all Keynesian economics pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. So do many of your friends and family invest in Bitcoin?
Yeah, so most of my friends, because I talk about Bitcoin a lot, most of my friends actually, I got them to download Bitcoin wallets, Lightning wallets, and usually when during their, if there's a birthday, one of my friends is having a birthday, usually what I do is I could rather send them sats than anything else. Yeah, and just try to encourage them to hodl the Bitcoin. Yeah, although I could say I haven't been able to actually successfully, nicely unspill my parents, because they are not tech savvy. So that's one disadvantage for me. But I've been stacking sats for them. Yeah, yeah. It has been amazing actually.
That's very kind of you, and that's that's part of what we do. We are the early adopters, and we can't force everybody else to come on board. You know, you mentioned that you use Bitcoin as a savings technology, and you're also using it as a spending technology. Do you have a certain amount that you keep as your hodl stack, and then use other Bitcoin to spend in like the circular economy?
Yeah, so I would say the primary use case, like in Zambia right now, the primary use case of Bitcoin is because we've got double-digit inflation, 15%. The primary use case of Bitcoin right now is as a savings technology. So making sure you stack as much as possible and save as much as possible. Yeah, but on the flip side, I believe that if we want to see Bitcoin succeed as a global reserve currency of the world, as a medium of exchange, we have to spend sats. So the Bitcoin secure economy that I've been working on, about 6 shops almost, accept Bitcoin. And I try as much as possible to spend, although it's usually hard because it's not easy spending sats, but I feel like this is the purpose of Bitcoin, and we have to do it. Yeah. So yeah, that's how it has been for me actually.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think you're exactly right. It's mostly savings for us, but where we can, we use it as to spend and to help the Bitcoin ecosystem. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there is this narrative in the Bitcoin space. Some people believe that Bitcoin cannot save as a medium of exchange. Yeah, somehow I kind of like get where they're coming from, but I feel like they don't understand the need people have of a neutral global money. Why? Because people in, for example, if in Zambia we got 15% inflation, and because our money is declining, and I was just taking some data. It's like from the time, because our money was established in like 1967, 1968, somewhere there, and it has lost about 96% of its purchasing power against only the dollar, not mentioning gold or other assets. Yeah, and it's just crazy, and we can't continue with this money. I doubt if our money will exist after 20 years, because at this rate, it's pretty much going to become useless. Yeah, so we need a money that is fair and that's neutral, and Bitcoin is the best alternative. Some people say that maybe other countries will be using USDT and maybe the dollar. I don't see that being the case, because eventually the dollar also it's already lost a lot of its purchasing power. So yeah, I feel like Bitcoin is actually the way forward. It's actually a need in most of our countries. I mean, where we live, some of us.
Yeah. And you mentioned the dollar. I get an email from Anthony Pompliano, the Pomp letter. And today he said Charlie Bolello posted this part on X, I assume. And the statement is, over the last 30 years, the purchasing power of the US consumer dollar has been cut in half due to inflation. And at the
Ish.
same time,
That's
the
great.
S&P 500 has gained 972%, or 8% a year, adjusting for inflation. So
Yeah,
even the US consumer in the past 30 years has been cut in half due to inflation. I know
that's
Zambia
crazy.
is even more,
Yeah,
Zimbabwe is even more,
yeah,
and the other
yeah.
countries that are even more.
And the fact, there was a time when I was explaining something to someone that countries like the US dollar, I mean the US, they have got the dollar, the reserve currency of the world, meaning that, or pretty much every other country in the world, they have got the dollar on their balance sheet. So it means if the US prints more dollars, it's like everyone else's money is diluted in a way. So in a way, they export inflation. Yeah, so I was saying that the dollar is good. Maybe we can use the dollar, but it won't be a fair ground. We need something neutral. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So on Nosta, you write that Bitcoin is your energy. Expand on this a little bit.
Yeah, so on Nostra, in fact, in my bio, I like Bitcoin is your energy. The reason behind that maybe is, number one, because I have seen inflation, double digit inflation for the longest period of time in my country. So Bitcoin is your energy is because for the first time you can hold a money that no one can take or steal or debase from you, and that's actually huge. So people save in their local currencies. The dollar, for people in the US, the dollar. As we save, some people save in kwacha and all that. But the money that you are saving is the more the government prints because of inflation, and they are literally stealing your energy. Yeah, and another way that I like looking at it is energy in a way is almost like tied to your time. So when you're working, you're exchanging your time and your effort for money, and then when you save that money, it's literally your time, it's your energy, and then someone is debasing. If they print money, they're diluting your energy. So it's like they're stealing your time, they're stealing your energy. So Bitcoin being your energy is pretty much something that means no one can steal or take it away, and that's just the unique idea.
Yes, you reminded me time is our most valuable resource because at the
True.
moment we only have a limited amount of time and we want to spend our time on this earth doing things that are meaningful to us. And Bitcoin encourages that. It did for me. Yeah. So tell me, what does freedom mean for you?
Freedom. Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So for me, freedom means just the ability to do what I want to do when I want to do it, with minimal or zero permission. Yeah, and I feel like Bitcoin fits into that perfectly, because with fiat money you need permission for almost everything. Yeah, so with fiat money, if you want to send money from one bank to the other, there is always permission. If the government want, or if the bank want, they can freeze your money, and yeah, it's just crazy. But with Bitcoin, you pretty much don't need permission. You can carry your asset in your head if you memorize the 12 words, and you can go anywhere in the world. You are at peace knowing that no one can get your money. Yeah, so, and also I could say freedom is also the state of not being enslaved. Inflation is pretty much enslavement, because everyone is, the governments and the central banks, they are stealing from you slowly. You are working hard, they are stealing from you, and Bitcoin is that tool that brings freedom to the human race. Yeah, I think that's what I could say freedom means to me. Ultimately,
Yeah.
I could say, in fact, there's this thing that people. I was telling someone that people think that we're obsessed with Bitcoin, but in essence, we are obsessed. We are obsessed with what Bitcoin promises, and it promises freedom. That's ultimately, and it promises that you'll not be enslaved, and you can actually build a future. And it gives certainty and lowers your time preference.
That's so true. And then the more you learn about Bitcoin, the more things you see that it offers. So
True.
we are a little obsessed, but there's good reason.
For
Do you
sure,
think
for sure.
do you think that eventually the Zambian people will get over the scam aspect? I mean, even I lost in the beginning because of, well, and I want to take responsibility. We do come for, like you mentioned, number go up, but then some of us learn a hard lesson and start learning and get educated. But do you think that the Zambian people will find their way to Bitcoin?
Yeah, definitely. They will definitely find their way to Bitcoin. I feel like some people who are open-minded, they'll actually, it will be sooner, but for some it will be out of necessity. From a few people that we have taught about Bitcoin, because they took the Me Premier Bitcoin course, my first Bitcoin. Most of them were skeptical and all that, but after taking the course, they started asking questions. "Oh, so you're not going to ask for any form of investments or something like that?" Yeah, so with that little education, most of them, they actually saw Bitcoin for what it truly is. It's just a tool that is coming to save us from ourselves, pretty much, because of inflation and just, yeah, government printing and all that. Yeah, so I feel like with time, and since Bitcoin is still young in a way, because it's like only 15 years, I feel like also with time, as people see this, because it's also going mainstream and all that, it will just become clear to a lot of people. Already here in Zambia, we are seeing a lot of people, most of my friends, they were skeptical, but now, after a while, and this thing is still going and it's going up, so they're beginning to realize that, okay, there may be more to this thing than what meets the eye.
And you reminded me, and the ability to be self sovereign. When we hold Bitcoin in our own wallets, we don't no longer need the banks. And that's huge. I sent some money to a friend in Zimbabwe, but the account was, let's say, in England somewhere. And the England bank wanted to know why I was sending it. My bank didn't ask, because I've been a customer for a long time, but it's really not, it's not their business why I'm sending it. If I borrowed
Yeah.
a little bit of money, I'm just paying it back. But so whereas Bitcoin, I can just send it and nobody
Yeah.
asks me why I'm sending it.
Yeah.
And
And
we're not
it's
trying to do illegal things, right? I mean, that does
exactly.
happen, but that happens in the fiat world too.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I was trying to explain to someone that a knife, for example, is just a tool. Bitcoin is just a tool that will help us actually transfer value across space, across time, and just create a fair global neutral money. So some people use it for bad things, but does it mean that Bitcoin is bad? The answer is no. Yeah, and just the idea of like sovereignty actually is actually a really huge idea, and uh, just to talking a bit about the banks. A certain friend of mine had a situation where she did some work online, and someone was supposed to pay her something like a $30, and then so the person sent the money via Swift to her bank. And the crazy situation that the fees for Swift transfer are extremely huge, and she was only able to get $15 and from
Wow.
the actual $50, and that's just crazy. It's like she worked hard on something, and then you just get half of that. Yeah, and then later on I showed her, okay, you can use Lightning. It's like Bitcoin on Lightning, literally sending money practically zero fee in a way. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of use case when it comes to Bitcoin, yeah, and I feel like people will see it eventually.
And just a quick question about how do people on-ramp in Zambia is I know that buying on the base layer can be expensive, but do you have a good solution for that there?
Yeah, so I think that has been actually one big issue here in Zambia in fact, at the moment even. Yeah, but recently we had Strike, the company Jack Mallers Strike, because it has got the Lightning network, so people are able to buy the payment system that's common here in Zambia is mobile money. So people are able to buy Bitcoin with mobile money and send it, let's say, to a Lightning wallet and all. Yeah, so Strike has been a huge help. We have got some other exchanges and all that, but we fear recommending them because we have got a lot of gambling tokens and altcoins. So yeah, pretty much I would say right now the most reliable is Strike. And in our community, another thing that we encourage is just peer to peer. So trusted people, if you want Bitcoin, you can just go and buy from trusted people, and if you want to sell, you can easily sell from trusted people within the community.
Wonderful. Peer to peer is part of that was peer to peer was in the white paper, so that was intended.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's one of the papers, the ultimate papers of Bitcoin, has to be peer to peer.
Well, I'm just glad to see Zambia in the hands of such knowledgeable people as you. And we're coming to the end here. Just tell us, what else are you passionate about?
Yeah, so other than Bitcoin, I'm passionate about God. So I'm a Christian. I'm passionate about family, friends, freedom. I feel like that's one of the reasons, I would say, the main reason that drove me to Bitcoin, freedom. Yeah, and recently a new addition is actually Nostra. Yeah, so these are the things that I'm actually looking at and I'm passionate about, pretty much.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Humphrey. It was great talking with you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.